This video will cover the rest of day 29 of the Karen Reed trial, but mostly it's going to be about the digital forensics. The first witness was Dr. Russell. She was limited as to what she could testify about. Without going through everything blow by blow, the bottom line is that she testified that in her professional opinion, and she does have the expertise, to a medical certainty, that the marks on John O'Keefe's arm were as a result of dog bites and scratches. She says it's a combination. Her testimony wasn't that long. The longest part of it was the defense taking her through all of her credentials and training. And throughout this, Lally was Lally and the judge was the judge. You know what I mean. You know how it goes. Let's move on to witness Richard Green. He is an expert in digital forensics. I need to remind you here that when it comes to tech, I'm useless. But it does put me in a position that might be similar to a juror. To those listeners who have tech expertise, feel free to point out things I've missed, nuances that I won't be able to see. And if you have tech expertise and can explain things in simple terms to other people in the comments who are asking questions, don't be afraid to jump on that. Also know that as I make my remarks here, I'm making my remarks as I go through the testimony. I might ask a question that gets answered in 5 minutes, or have a thought about something and then change my mind as the testimony continues. This witness was contacted by the defense in September 2022. He received the image files from Karen Reed's phone, John O'Keefe's, and Jen McKay. His goals at the time were to look at location data for John O'Keefe. He was able to determine that John O'Keefe arrived at the driveway at 34 Fairview at 12:24 a.m. He looked in the location cache data. He said he used a tool called CellHawk. It gives GPS locations as well as accuracy ranges. The defense asked him, could you try to determine an accuracy range within 3 feet? The witness says, yes, I could try. And the witness did try. And what he learned was the information was not granular enough. A 3-foot accuracy range was not possible. This witness said he cannot narrow down John's phone location to within 3 feet using GPS. Yannetti asked him, what happens if you increase the range to 500 feet of accuracy? The witness said, you would see a large number of circles. A large number? Multiple circles. On Carino's map, he showed us 1 circle per map, not multiple circles. Is that the result of a different tool being used? Or did he just pick? Or did he combine them? Now I'm not so sure. The witness stressed it's important to understand that when you're looking at a range of accuracy circle on a map, you don't focus on the middle. The accuracy means anywhere within the circle. That means you pay attention to the edges of the circle too. The edges are not less important than the center of the circle. It's somewhere in the circle. And he also pointed out that this location accuracy is just Apple's best guess. So even that isn't 100%. You know, this brings to mind cases in which people drive into bodies of water or fields because they were blindly following GPS. So the location data was one, I'll call it a package of data. They move on to another package, and that is John's Apple health data. Yannetti asked him if the health data is generally accepted within the forensic science community as being reliable. But the witness does not give Yannetti a blanket yes or no. It would have been nice for Yannetti, for the witness to say yes, but the witness isn't going to give him that. And this is Yannetti's witness. The witness explains a little bit about how it works and says there is valuable information that is relied on by the forensic science community. And the other thing he says is it also depends on what data you're using. I think it's good that the witness did not give a blanket yes or no, because a blanket yes or no would not have been accurate. There are details and nuances here that this expert is aware of that non-experts might misunderstand, and he doesn't want to mislead. So good sign here. He says, as for the degree of accuracy, that depends on what kind of data and artifacts are being pulled out. He said steps are known, and now this is the Apple Health data, that is known to have an accuracy rate of 98% if it's pulled from that health app. So it's not all health apps, it's this particular Apple Health data. They did pull that from John's phone. And Yannetti asked if this came from what Green received from the image file of John's phone from the police. And the answer was yes. I'm going to play you a clip because they go through it faster than I do.
What does record number 2 show on page 2 of John's Apple Health data?
Sure. So this is the number of meters. It's listed as 87.74, and the time is listed between 12:21 and 10 seconds. And there's a milliseconds after that, but I'll just round it off to the second if you don't mind. So 12:21 and 10 seconds to 12:24 and 22 seconds.
Okay. And you said that it showed 87 meters traveled during that time period?
Correct.
And with regard to that same time period, 12:21 and 10 seconds and 12:24 and 22 seconds, what does record number 2 reflect?
Again, it's the same time period, and the steps taken is recorded as 80 steps.
Okay, and you said the same time period, so again, 12:21:10 to 12:24:22, correct?
Correct.
Tell the jury what that reflects.
Sure. So this indicates 3 sets of floors. That represents elevation change, so it doesn't indicate to us up or down. And the time period for that is 12:22:14 to 12:24:37.
With regard to all of this data, the 80 steps and the 3 flights of stairs that you mentioned, is it possible to pinpoint where within the time frame that's given those steps or flights of stairs were ascended or descended?
No, the most granular we can get is the time period, and it doesn't signify as any more likely at the beginning of the time period than at the end of the time period than at some time in the middle. And if you think logically, like just as traveled, that doesn't happen at a split moment. It happens over a period of time. So it's time is a factor in that equation, and this is how the Apple records that data. You got to look at the time overall.
Okay, so you don't know if the steps are bunched up toward the beginning or toward the end or more evenly spread out?
No, I would not be able to tell you that.
I appreciate the witness saying, I can't tell you that. He's not trying to make the evidence fit a narrative, so that's good. And I notice between 12:21 and 12:24, in those seconds, John traveled 87.74 meters, and that's 80 steps. So in case anyone's interested, the range for normal walking speeds for adults is between 1.2 and 1.4 meters per second. So about 82 meters a minute for adults. And if you look at what this is reflecting, it does fit. I also notice that the time periods for the steps and the floors overlap. I made a visual here to help me convey this. The purple is where the times reflected in the records overlap. If nothing else, this proves that John was not on a hill on another street as Garino interpreted. I think it's evidence of more than that, but I'm waiting for more information. Yannetti asked about the 3 different clocks. Do you remember this from the cross-examination? And what he's referring to are the clocks that are used by the apps. The witness said he used Axiom, so recall Garino also used that app. This witness used that app to look at this. He looked at the Waze app specifically. You'll recall that that's the mapping app that John used, and that's what the prosecution used to say that John was 1.5 miles away because they were relying on the time in this app. Well, turns out that the app uses a monotonic timestamp. And Yannetti and the witness went back and forth. But the bottom line is that the timestamp associated with this Waze app showed a 3-minute difference. And Lally was objecting. So Yannetti and the witness couldn't keep going with this. But everybody heard there's a 3-minute difference between the clock the map application uses and the other clocks. You remember old movies in which a character would say, synchronize your watches? Yeah. So it looks like Garino relied on a clock that was off by 3 minutes and tried to insert it into a timeline that used different clocks without syncing them with this clock. That's what it looks like to me. Some tech expert might have something different to say about it.
Okay, so this is another entry from John O'Keefe's data, cell phone data, and this records 25.46 meters occurring between 12:31:56 and 12:32:16.
Okay. Directing your attention to page 5, record number 3, if you could tell the jury what that shows, and if we could have that displayed as well, Mr. Bates.
So this is directly related to the distance, and this is recording 36 steps, and it's the same time period, 12:31:56 to 12:32:16.
Okay. So we have 36 steps being taken according to Apple Health data on John O'Keefe's phone for a time period that ends at 12:32:16.
Objection.
Sustained. Ask it differently, Mr. Nunn.
With regard to those 36 steps, do we know where within that time frame they were taken?
Sure. Let me reread that here. We January 29th, 2022, 12:31:56 a.m. Is actually 12:31:56.109 a.m. and 12:32:16.507 a.m.
Hold on. Garino testified that between 12:25 and 6:15, there was no movement of John's phone. Here we see there was movement. Remember how Garino said there was no real speed of John's phone between 12:25 and 6:15? And I asked, what the heck is going on with that? What does real speed mean? No real speed? Why not just say no speed? Well, it looks like the question has been answered here. They move on to Jen McCabe's Google search. This expert believes that the search occurred at or before 2:27 a.m. He said he looked at the data in John's phone that showed last viewed time. Well, if you go by this, it tells a different story about this search. That doesn't mean that what the other expert said was wrong if viewed in isolation. But this is a recurring theme with Lally, cherry picking, ignoring exculpatory evidence, omitting important information, and purposely placing things out of context. So now when it comes to very technical information, it's going to be really tough for the average person to catch all that and work it out. At this point, even before hearing more, I must change my prior conclusions in respect to Jen McCabe's search. The change in opinion does not come from my knowledge of the tech. You know I know bupkis, and I had to rely on the experts. And there's no way I'm going to pretend that I know more than they do. I don't. The change in opinion is because I've just been presented with evidence that proves there is an additional reliable source of information that the other experts did not look at. Last viewed is why this expert is saying 12:27 or before. I wish in court they could just get all the experts together around at a table and let them talk and let us all listen in. I think we might learn more. So last viewed, 2:27 or before. One of the things that had an impact on my thinking with the last experts, the two that the Commonwealth presented, was that they showed information about what was being viewed on Jen McCabe's screen on the phone at the time. And none of it was that Hoslong to dying cold. And in addition to that, they had all this information about how tabs work and all of that. But if last viewed is 227 or before, well, then that means it doesn't really matter that at precisely 227 that something else was showing up on the screen or being viewed on the screen, because it could have happened before, could have happened at 1. And if that's true, do you know what else that goes to? Premeditation. Green said that when he found the artifact from Jen's search, it was in a deleted state. He said he looked at the data with 5 different tools and found it to be consistent across all 5. The witness wanted to put this into context in his own examination, so he wanted to look more closely at what other artifacts there were around the same time as this search. You gotta appreciate that kind of curiosity and that willingness to take a closer look. Instead of trying to explain it to you, because I'm gonna mess it up, I'm gonna play you a clip.
So we're looking at here web-related history, and also I have the filter turned on for application usage, because there's some log files, sort files that the iPhone keeps track of to record user interactions, and that can give us a idea of the history as well. And then, as I mentioned, we have it filtered so that it's only showing dates, that dates existed, and we took the earliest possible date to a date way in the future. And then it's listed, and next to the date and time, you'll see a little arrow, and it's skinny at the top and big at the bottom. That tells you it's going from smallest, earliest time to latest time. And this particular view is showing us the last of that series, because what's relevant and really important here is that the Safari suspended state tabs ends up being the last of the entries related to that, not one of the beginning of the entries related to that.
And what is the significance of the Safari state tab being the last entry? What does that tell you?
Yeah, well, so it tells us the internet history happened before that, and the purpose of this tab on at least this particular iPhone with this very specific iOS version is to record the state of that tab when the user left that. And the whole purpose of that is, if you're on Safari, you're on a website, and say you have to take a phone call or answer a text message, and you navigate away from the Safari app, when you come back, it remembers where you were and allows you to pick off from there. It also allows you to hit the tab button and see what other tabs you might have open and navigate to one of those tabs.
All right, so as I see the last tab, am I correct that the time is 1:29:22, the same day, at 2:27 and 38 seconds? Is that what it says on your?
Yes, on this particular one. So that is just moments before the Google search artifact.
The one that you previously talked about, the how long to die in the code.
Long to die in the code, yes.
But all the other history of this particular artifact was before that time, correct?
Correct.
So with regard to what that tells you about when the It's Raining Men was either searched or accessed, was that at, after, or before 2:27 and 38 seconds?
I'm sorry, can you?
Sustained.
Okay, well, if you say it one more time.
All right, let me try and put it a different way. Given the timestamp of 2:27 and 38 seconds on January 29th for that Safari suspended state tab with the It's Raining Men, what did that tell you about the timing of when It's Raining Men was accessed by the user?
Yeah, well, so the indications would be that that tab was brought up and then went away from to do another tab. So it can happen less than a second. It doesn't take long to open up a tab and start a new tab. It can be done very quickly.
I'm not really phrasing this the right way to get what I want. What I want is the timing of the interaction with It's Raining Men by the actual iPhone user. When did that happen?
Certainly, all the activity that we have is all prior to the recording of that timestamp in the browser state.
All right, now, with regard to this particular example where the browser state DB is the last entry, so the activity happened before, was that unique on this phone, or were there many examples of this?
No, I found many examples of this exact behavior.
All right. Now, given your findings in researching these issues and how this user used this iPhone with this iOS, do you have an opinion to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty as to the timing of that search for how long to die in cold?
Objection.
Sustained.
So the last interaction was the video It's Raining Men. Oh, didn't she say she was playing that video while they were at Fairview? This expert's opinion is that the search happened at or before January 29th, 2022 at 2:27 a.m. He said everything else on that particular version is consistent with that search happening at or before that time. This expert checked using multiple tools and looked at more data and assessed everything in context. Contrast this with the previous expert who were limited in their scope. And neither of those experts could replicate or fully explain an anomaly and didn't have everything in the full context.
What did you find of note?
Certainly. What was the time frame of the deleted records? Now, I'll just talk about this particular report here. It starts at 5:33:47 in the morning, and on the second page we see it ends at 8:50 and 15 seconds, again a.m. And then the normal calls, what we call live data, then begins at 8:59 and 34 seconds and goes on throughout the day with no additional deletions.
And am I right that that's the call log, those are all phone calls?
Correct, yeah, this is the call log.
And what was the difference between the calls that were at 8:59 and after on January 29th of 2022 and the calls that were at or before 8:50 a.m. on January 29th of 2022?
Yeah, well, it's the state they were found in, deleted versus live data.
I'm sorry?
Deleted data at the earlier time and live data after the 8:59:34.
What percentage of phone calls were found deleted on Jennifer McCabe's phone prior to 8:50 a.m. on January 29th?
So all right, I have to see you.
No, but I had asked you from the first recorded call there that was listed as deleted until 8:50 a.m. or so. What percentage of calls were deleted on Jen McCabe's phone within that time period?
Yeah, so we found no live data, so 100% of them would have been deleted.
Now, are you aware of the term spontaneous deletion?
No, sir. I know what the individual words mean, but in relation to digital forensics, I'm not familiar with that term.
And do you have an opinion as to how those calls would have been deleted from that phone?
Those would have been used or deleted.
Yannetti wanted to know, how was the search deleted? The witness explained, I found a lot of other user-deleted artifacts between midnight and the early morning on January 29th. Yannetti hands him a document that's from Celebrite, and it lists a deleted call record. Well, Lally wants to prevent this document, whatever they're looking at, from going into evidence. Well, it turns out that these calls that occurred sometime between midnight and the early morning hours on January 29th included Uncle Brian Albert. Well, that's why Lally wanted to prevent it from coming in. Maybe Lally should send Jen McCabe and Brian Albert a bill for all the legal defense work he's doing for them. On cross-examination, Lally asked him about Whiffen and Hyde, and the witness knew who they were. He said he viewed their reports. Lally asks him if he's certified specifically in Celebrite. And the witness says his certifications are more broad, not specific to just Celebrite. Lally was trying to get him to say that he was referred to Whiffen when he contacted Celebrite, and the witness said, no, that's not true. He did speak with someone from Celebrite, and no, he was not referred to Whiffen or his team. And he started to say that he did speak with Whiffen. A couple of weeks ago, Lally asked if Green was asked to look at Carrie Roberts' phone. What the heck is he going for here? The answer is no. Lally asked if the witness looked at Reed's location data, and Green said all indications were it would have contained the location data at the time the phone was seized. But by the time he got it, there was no location data there. Oh, interesting. I think this is a big deal. At best, it wasn't secured and preserved. That's the best case scenario. And I'm not even going to bother going with the worst case scenario. He said he also found deleted location data from April of 2022. What? This is Reed's phone, remember. Who had Reed's phone in April of 2022? It wasn't Reed. My understanding is that it was in the custody of the state police at that time. And you know who had Karen Reed's phone very early on? Trooper Proctor. Why is there data location on Reed's phone in April that is then deleted? What? Somebody explain this to me. Lally asked if there were deleted web searches from Reed's phone on the afternoon of January 29th. So after the incident. And the witness said he had no cause to even look there. Well, yeah, because this is after the incident and none of that was in question. And you know what Lally's doing here? Aside from his usual insinuation, he is looking for a way to present to the jury that Reed was looking for DUI lawyers that afternoon, which, by the way, she did not do until after Proctor talked to her. I'll also mention she did not look for a lawyer to help her with a homicide charge. Look, if the police contact you and lead you to believe that you're under suspicion and that you could be in trouble for something, if you don't look for a lawyer, at least think about that, then, well, that's not very smart. And citizens have a right to ask for legal advice. Wow. Lally pressed the witness as to whether he was aware of what Greeno testified to. Well, of course, the witness doesn't know what the specific testimony was. Lally used this opportunity to repeat another witness's testimony and present an argument to the jury by basically testifying himself that Greeno was talking about something else, that Greeno's 3 feet was about using GPS to map out where John was found. But here's the problem with Lally's argument. Greeno is talking about using GPS, and Green's testimony is about GPS, and he testified it is not accurate within 3 feet. You may recall that when the witness from CERT testified, he said the GPS that they use is accurate within 16 feet, and that's if all the signals are clear. Another trooper testified that the signals in that area are not strong, and that's without the addition of weather factors. It seems like the signals are bad when they want them to be bad and great when they want them to be great. Also, in response to Lally's question about Reed's location data, Green testified he could tell it had been there. So she had not turned off her location data, as was insinuated by the Commonwealth earlier. But the GPS that would have proven the plow driver was there was conveniently down that night. They can't have something on Reed's phone showing that the GPS was working. And you have to question how John's was working and the Waze app was working and the town's GPS was not. And if there was location data on Karen's phone proving she went to Jen McCabe's shortly after 5 a.m., well, now that just wouldn't do, because then they couldn't claim she was at Fairview, and they need to claim she was at Fairview so they could then claim that the vehicle that the plow driver saw was not a Ford Edge, but it was her SUV. You see, they have to cover for the owner of that Ford Edge. So, of course, her location data had to be allowed to disappear. Let me put it that way. So much disappearing and appearing evidence in this case, it's magic. Well, Lally's little attempt at testifying and insinuation backfired when he confronted Green on this issue of Greeno's testimony about mapping and GPS, because the witness actually answered him. The witness said the GPS will not give you a 3-foot accuracy. And And how that applies to the trooper's testimony, he can't say with specificity. If this witness could speak to another witness's testimony specifically, then he'd be in hot water for other reasons. The witness finished the answer, and everyone was just sitting there waiting for Lally. And there was this really long pause, like Lally had been struck dumb or something. He was probably just looking through his papers, but the camera wasn't on them. Well, this witness filled that void by saying, "I'd be happy to opine on location data if you want me to." And suddenly, Lally can speak. Lally very quickly says, "There's no question. We've witnessed a miracle." Lally wants the witness to agree. There's no way for a user to delete a tab in Safari. And Green answered, "When you close a tab, you're taking it from an active state and putting it into an inactive state." The witness says you can go into your history and delete things there, and you can go into the specific websites and delete those. He also said this.
If you want me to continue, the WAL file itself, you can't open up a WAL file and say, I want to delete that record. But functioning the phone through the user interfaces will have an effect of deleting data within that WAL file.
In reference to the Google search Hast Long to Die and Called, Lally asked if Green attempted to independently determine the cause of the timestamp being where it was. And Green said, yes. I'm going to play you yet another clip. I'm sorry, but if I don't do it this way, I will mess up some detail.
Now, is it your interpretation that the timestamp means the search appeared at that time solely based on the naming of the field in the database?
No, sir.
Now, can a WAL file contain items that are so new that they're not yet committed to the database?
Yes, sir. That's the purpose of it.
So the WAL file holds the newest information until it's merged to the database, including additions, deletions, changes, all of those items, correct?
That is correct.
Now, according to your affidavit, the device was in active use between 2:23 a.m. and 2:31 a.m. And just to be clear, I'm talking about Ms. McCabe's device, correct?
Correct.
And what other searches did you see at that time, and where were they performed?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? I couldn't quite hear you.
Searches did you observe in that time frame, and where were they performed?
Well, there were a number of websites, including the Rainy Minute exhibit that we did. There was Ozone Basketball, I believe. There were Hockermont, Smith. And I can tell you that those, similarly, the last entry with those there is the browser state DB file. It's not at the beginning. It's not at the end. And I have a couple thoughts on why that may be in regards to Ms. Hyde and Ms. Whiffen. I'm happy to share those with you.
I'm not asking you anything about that, sir.
Very
What I'm
good.
asking is it possible for a change request in the WAL to a SQLite database pertaining to one particular field, leaving the other fields as what they were previously?
I want to answer your question as well as I can. So can you repeat that one more time?
Is it possible for a change request in the WAL to a SQLite database pertaining to one particular field, leaving the other fields as what they were previously?
If I'm understanding correctly, when the WAL file gets written to the database, and could that have made the change ending with this deleted record? Is that the question? I'm sorry. I want to answer you. I'm just
That's okay.
a little lost on how you're asking
Understand
it.
the question?
Sorry?
Do you not understand the question?
Why don't you move on, Mr. Mayor?
Is it possible that the URL field, which has the website name, was updated to the newest search while the timestamp retained the original search? Is that possible?
No, not the way on this particular phone, in this particular iOS, and also with the user interacted with it, that it would have been at the 227 or before. The way this very specific iOS was happening, that is consistent with all the other ones that I observed out there on the phone related to specific web searches and activity.
Is it possible that the search for How Long to Die in the Cold at 6:24 a.m. was the most recent search completed in the tab?
Well, not in that tab, but I certainly agree with you that there was a second search done at around that time.
Now, is it also possible that the search that you assert took place at 2:27 and 40 seconds in the morning is the same as the search that took place at 6:24:51 a.m. for that same search?
Yeah, that's inconsistent with the actual data I'm seeing on this actual phone with this precise iOS version.
When he's having trouble understanding the question, I suspect that either he's having trouble following Lally's maze of words or that Lally's not making sense. Much like Lally asked medical experts questions that would make no sense to an expert. And notice he said, not in that tab. I think the detail about the search done in the morning and that it was not done in the same tab is bad for the hypothesis that the timestamp on the 227 search is related to closing the tab after the second search after 6 a.m. That doesn't work if it's a different tab. But if you tech wizards out there think I've misunderstood this, please do explain it. Previously, I had wondered why the search engine suggestion would be how long to digest food. When Jen's searches were about basketball and a dance video, not diet or the digestive system, this witness answered that question. Here it is.
Do you recall that search as far as being a suggestion from Apple, from the iOS, as far as the search with how long to digest food?
Okay, I didn't hear your whole question, but I heard the last part about how long to digest food, so I can opine on that. So my feeling on that is when the how long to die code was put in, that was most likely a Apple suggestion. And I've done some testing now. The time period I'm doing my testing, is after the fact that this would have actually occurred. But as I tested that on a live phone and using a Google search, I could see that how long to digest food would come up. I also noticed the specific phrase, how long does it take to die from hypothermia? So as you do this Google search, you try to repeat what's being done. Those are two suggestions that actually came up.
And the witness himself brought up something he said in an affidavit that he later learned was incorrect. I want to talk about that. This man knows that admitting this will likely make him look bad. He knows Lally is going to use it against him. He knows it does not favor his client, but his client's opponent. But he did it anyway. I expect people will jump on this as evidence of, probably whatever they want. So insert something negative here. I will leave all of those arguments to other people. I'm interested in something else here. The guy didn't sit on it and hope nobody noticed. He brought it up himself and pointed it out to everybody. You know how it feels to make a mistake. Hopefully, you know what it is like to learn new information and amend your opinion based on the new evidence. It's hard to do this publicly. Yes, it is the right thing to do, but some people will not do it. Oh, people will crap on this guy, but to me, he's not diminished because of this. What would have diminished him is if he'd fought for his ego instead of what he knew to be true. And the incorrect thing was about the how long to digest food search. In an earlier affidavit, Green said that Jen searched that. Since the time that he said that, he has done further experiments and he has changed his mind. His current opinion is that how long to digest food was a search engine suggestion rather than something she searched. But also go back and think about what would lead the search engine to suggest this. He thinks it's because she was searching how long to die in cold, and that she searched that more than once. And when you search it more than once, the search engine gives you a suggestion of how long to die of hypothermia. And after that suggestion, it gives you how long to digest food. He also repeatedly spoke about using the exact same phone make and model, the same version. He said that different iOS versions can reflect things very differently, so it's important to use the same version. Lally asked Green about the accuracy of Apple Health data for the steps taken. Green reiterated his earlier testimony that studies have been done on this and it has a high rate of accuracy. Lally asked about if the phone was traveling in a vehicle. The witness said it would not record steps. He added that he did testing with the exact same make and model phone as John's, and he tried to make it register steps in the car and in other situations, but it would not. Lally asked the witness to agree that native location data on John's phone showed no movement after 12:25 a.m. The witness said he'd have to look at the exhibit again because he couldn't remember what the last time was. Well, John's Apple Health data shows he took 36 steps between 12:31 and 12:32 a.m. Lally brings up the issue of elevation and if he can pinpoint where in the time range that John was ascending and descending. And Lally asks him, were you aware that John O'Keefe was 1.5 miles away during the time he was ascending and descending? And this is a crap question. Can't believe he got away with that. We've gotten in a circle here. This goes back to Garino not looking at the clocks and the Waze app using a different clock that's 3 minutes off. But if you take all the information and look at it both ways, the way that makes more sense is when you account for that 3 minutes on that Waze app. They got into this technical discussion about the Waze app and the clocks, and I'm not going to even try and repeat it. I have to say, I didn't understand some of it. I want to go back to what's not being argued about here, and that's the Apple Health data. Between 12:31 and 12:32, John's Apple Health says he took 36 steps. And even the police witnesses agree that John was at 34 Fairview at that time. So even the police witnesses agree he is at Fairview at 12:31 and his watch is saying he took 36 steps. All of this 36 steps is later than the times that Lally and Green are arguing about right now. And you know what? Even if you add or subtract 3 minutes, it's not enough. It's not going to change that he was at 34 Fairview and taking 36 steps. And that was it for this day. Thank you for listening. Trust your gut. I'll see you in the comments.